Hi, this is Paul with a C# exercise. This one is not from any book. This is a custom one. I got a request to do a project where we would compute a checking account balance. And the assignment says that we would create a form that includes radio buttons to indicate the type of transaction, deposit, check, or service charge. A text box will allow the user to enter the amount of the transaction, and we will display the new balance in the read-only text box or a label. We will calculate the balance by adding deposits and subtracting service charges and checks. So they call it checks, but basically that's withdrawals. We will include buttons for calculate, clear, and exit, and we will also include a button for summary, which is down here. But alright, before we do that, we will add a validation to the project. We will display a message box if the new balance would be a negative number. If there is not enough money to cover a check, we do not deduct the check amount. Instead, we will display a message box with the message Insufficient Funds, and we will deduct a service charge of $10. We will add a summary button that will display the total number of deposits, the total dollar amount of deposits, the number of checks, and the dollar amount of the checks. And we will not include checks that were returned for the insufficient funds. However, we will add the $10 service charge to those checks, to the totals for the summary button. And again, we will use the message box to display all this information. Alright, so I already created a form. It's very simple. Here are the 3 radio buttons, one for deposit, one for check, one for service charge. The text box where we will enter the amount of the transaction, and a read-only the text box that will update each time we click the calculate button. It will display the current balance. Alright, so when we go to coding, you know what, let me start with clear and maybe exit, actually, mostly because these are very simple. The exit will simply say close, and that will close up program. And our clear, we will simply clear all the check boxes and the text boxes. So we will do, I named the check boxes as text box balance. That's the one that will display the current balance, and the other text box is transaction amount that we will clear, and we will uncheck the radio button. So I named those radio button deposit checked equals false, so it will not be checked, and the same for the radio button service charge, and for the radio button I called it check, and it's all false. So this will uncheck any radio buttons and clear those 2 text boxes that we have. Alright, so that takes care of the clear and exit. So now let's do the calculate. And in order to calculate these, we obviously need some variables first. So I need some maybe class variables. Remember, we are going to be doing the summary at the end. Where's the text? That will have the total number of deposits, the total amount of deposits, and the same for the checks. So we can have those as a form level variables, and the same for the balance, because balance will be changed with each click on the calculate button. So let's do that. So private, and then make it static again, because it's gonna hold the value until we clear it, until we reset it, and it's gonna be a double, and it's gonna be balance. I'll call it balance, and I'll initialize it to 0. And the other variables will be the integer of total deposits, initialized to 0, and private static, and double total deposits amount. This will be the dollar value of all the deposits, And we'll do the same, except this is misspelled. We'll do the same for the checks. Static integer total checks and private static and double total check amount. So these are our class level or form level variables. So they'll be we can use any functions or methods down the road, and these will be available as long as the methods are part of this class. So let's go to the calculate and click. If I click double click the calculate button, I come over here, and we need to figure out what transaction the user wants. Remember, over here we have the radio buttons. One is deposit, check, and one is the service charge. So the easiest way to do that is to kind of assign a value to each of the radio buttons and hold it in a variable. And I'm gonna do it with a character, and I'll call the variable transaction. I'll initialize it to empty, and just a space. So this will be basically what transaction we are performing. It's gonna be either the deposit, check, or service charge. You know what, since I'm already commenting this, yeah, let me comment this too, so it's easier for you to follow. So the total, this is a balance, we know that, but this is the total deposits will be used for a summary of all deposits. This will be used for summary of all deposit amounts, or deposit dollar amounts, and the same with the check. Used for summary of all checks, and used for summary of all checks dollar amounts. Okay, so anyway, go back to the calculate button. So that's the transaction, and it's a character, and now we can simply find out which radio button is checked and assign a value to these transaction variables. So if let me just comment it, something like find out what radio button is selected. I'm commenting it because, again, this is a custom project. I was asked to do it, so it's gonna be easier to follow for anyone who's using this project for school, or for your own practice. Anyway, so if a radio deposit that checked, if it is true, then it's checked, and a transaction, and we can assign a character of D for deposit. Else if radio button service charge that checked, if this one's checked, then transaction will equal to S for service charge. And else if radio button checked, if this one is checked, then transaction will equal, and we can assign it to C for check. They call it again check, but it's basically a withdrawal. Okay, so this is a deposit, this is a service charge, and this is the check. So now when we know which radio button was checked or clicked, we can do a switch statement, and based on that decide what activity or what calculation needs to be performed. So we will do a switch statement, and we will pass the transaction value on it, into it, and the cases will be, if case is D, which is, remember over here, that's the deposit. If this is D, Let me just do the skeleton of that. Case S for the service, and case C, this is for the check. So these are the three cases that are possible, and by default, basically if none of them is true, then it means that neither radio button was clicked, so we can simply display like an error message asking the user to click the radio button or select the transaction. So the default would be something like message box that show, right, and something like select transaction. Okay, so this is our case, and now we can do the the actual logic within it. So let me add a break over here, and the first is the deposit. Now remember, deposit or any transaction will be entered into a text box. In other words, it's gonna be a string, a text, but we are working with numbers, so we have to make sure that the user actually entered a valid number. We have to validate the input. And we have to do it for all three of them, because they all three are expecting a number. So we can create a function, something like a validate text box function, that we will call each time we need to validate the text within a text box. So I'm going to create a function here. Just scroll down, and over here, let's say I can do private. I'm thinking it's going to actually return a true or false, so it's gonna be a boolean, and again I'll call it validate text box. So basically validate input. Now in this function, like I said, it will return true if user enters valid number. Otherwise, of course, it will return false. So let's declare a variable. I'll just call it value. That will be the text entered into the text box. And I'm going to use a method called try_parse, and this method returns true or false depending whether it succeeds or whether it fails to parse in the text or the string and changing it into whatever we want. In this case, we want it double, so we will return it will, and it's a double. We're trying to do it, and we will do try_parse. In other words, we're trying to see if the text entered into a text box can be parsed as a double or as a number. So the text box, and you can see that it's asking for a string, and it outputs a result. So the string is the text box transaction amount .text, and the syntax is out, basically output, and the output is the value itself. That's why we declare the value over here. So again, we have a value that we're trying to parse that the text box or the content of the text box into this value, and the value is of a double. So if we can do it, then it returns true. If we cannot, in other words, if user entered, let's say, a string instead of a number, then it will return false. And we can use this function for each transaction, deposit, check, or the service charge. So now I can go back to our switch statement, and if go to our deposit, in other words case D, and we do a simple if statement, if, and we call the validate text box function. So if this returns true, so basically validate if user entered valid number into the text box. So if this returns true, now we can proceed and with the calculation. And we can create a variable double of call it deposit, and we can assign it the content of the text box, because now we know that it is actually a double, that it's a number. So our text box trans amount dot text. But of course this is still a string as far as C# is concerned. We need to do the conversion, so convert to double, and there we go. Now if we try to do this directly and it fails, we would get an exception. We cannot convert, if it cannot convert the text to a double and assign it to our double variable, it will simply fail and throw an exception. That's why we are validating it before. Okay, so you know what, let me put this in the brackets, because we will have more statements within this block. So that is our deposit, and now we can use this number to calculate the balance. We can add the deposit to our balance, and we can do it directly here, but I prefer to simply create separate functions for these, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to create a private, and it will not return anything, so it's gonna be void deposit transaction, and it will accept the double. I'll just call it D for a deposit. This D is basically the deposit that we will be passing here. So and all we're going to do is add to balance the current deposit. Alright, so you can come over here and call this method the deposit transaction, and we are going to pass. You can see that it's asking for a double. We can pass the deposit. So again, if user enters correct number, we will convert that number or the text into a double and hold it in our deposit. Then we will call the function deposit over here, and we will add whatever is the deposit into the current balance. Remember, the balance is static. It will simply hold all the values, or the current value of it will be changed no matter depending on how many times this function is being called, or how many times we perform deposits. Now once this is done, we need to display the balance. In fact, we need to display the balance for each of these cases. So again, I can create a function private void, and I'll call it display balance, and in it I will simply display the current balance into our text box. So the text box, I'll call it txt balance equals, and assign $sign plus whatever is the balance, and I'll convert it to string, since we are now converting it back to a text rather than a number. So this one display balance in a text box. Alright, so that's our deposit. Now what happens if the user does not enter a valid number? Well, we can do an else statement here and display an error message. And if it's an invalid input, again, we can use a function, because we can reuse it for all these cases. So over here I will do private, it's gonna be a void, I'll just call it error message, and in it I will do a message box show, and the message box will simply show something like invalid entry, please select or enter a valid amount. Alright, so and yeah, that's all. So again, this is display error message if user does not enter valid number into the text box. So over here we can go, after the if statement will be else, and the else will be simple call to this error message function. There. So now if the user does not enter valid number, we call the error message and it displays the invalid entry, please enter a valid amount. And this structure is gonna be the same for our service charge as well as the check. So we go to our service charge case and we do the same thing. If we'll call the same function if the validate text box passes, then we have a correct number. We can do a double, I'll call it service charge, and it will equal to the same thing. So I will just copy paste it. It will equal to whatever the amount is entered into the text box. Of course, we're not going to do the deposit this time. We're going to do a service charge calculation, which basically means we're going to deduct from or subtract from our balance. So I'll come over here. I'll create another function, private void service charge transaction, and this one expects a double, and I'll just call it S for service charge. And just like we did with the deposit, we'll do the same over here, but this time remember we have to check if this would cause the balance to be a negative, because if it goes to negative we cannot allow this transaction. Now that's not the service charge, it's what does it say? If there's not enough money to cover check, do not deduct the check amount. Well, that's for the check, but the same thing comes for the service charge. You're not going to charge a service charge if the balance would be less than a 0. So first we need to do an if statement. If our balance minus the service charge is greater or equal to 0, in other words, if the balance is okay, then yeah, we can go ahead and perform this transaction. So we will deduct our service charge from the balance. So it's balance minus equals S, basically means deduct S from the current balance. Else, and we will simply display a message box dot show, and it will say the transaction cannot be completed because the balance would be less than 0. So that takes care of the service charge calculation. So when I come over here to our switch statement, after I have the number converted from the text box, I'll call the service charge transaction function or a method, and I will pass the service charge variable into it. So it will grab the service charge variable, or the value of it, passes into what we now call S, checks the calculation, would it be greater than 0? If it is, take it out of the balance. If not, display an error message. and I'll copy paste this. Oh, by the way, actually I'll copy paste this because, again, if the user does not enter valid number, then we will display the message. That's why I like to use the methods and functions like this, because I can simply call these rather than keep repeating myself and type in the error messages. Now, in case of the checks, I'll copy paste it. Again, this is true. We have to validate the value, except this time we're not calling a service charge. We'll just create a variable called check, and we will pass the check into the transaction. But this one I'll call, well, let me just create it first. I will call this one private void, and this is gonna be check transaction, and double, I'll just call it C for check. So over here I'll call that method check check transaction. Now, within this method, since we are calculating a check, we still cannot go into a negative like if the balance would be negative, we simply throw or display insufficient funds, and on top of that, though, we will deduct the service charge of $10. Now the balance can go to negative. Let's say I have a balance of $5 and I try to withdraw $10. It will display insufficient funds, charge me $10, so now the balance will be -5. So that is okay. That can be in even in real balance. In real bank you can go into a negative, but it won't let you clear the check. It will simply only add the service fee that the bank charges, and that's what we have to do. That's what we have to do here. So we will do our if the balance, if we deduct C from it, the check, and it is greater or equal to 0, so if the balance is gonna be okay, we can do the balance minus equals C. We can deduct the check or the withdrawal from the balance, and if not, else. Now we deduct $10 as the fee. So balance minus equal 10. And we will also display the message box that will say insufficient funds. So if the user tries to tries to take more money than it's in the balance, we don't allow it. But we will take out $10 as a service fee. If it is okay, we will take the whole check or the whole withdrawal from the balance. Okay, so that should be the basics of this whole program. But we also, if you remember, we're supposed to have a summary, with the total checks and total amounts added to it. But before I do that, let me test this and see if it works. Actually, one thing that I just realized. Remember when we do the deposit, we also call the method to show the balance in the text. See, over here we have the display balance, but we're not actually using it, so we have to use that after each of the transaction. After we perform the deposit, we will call the display balance, and we will call that after we perform the service charge or after we perform the check transaction as well. Otherwise it would not, the balance would update, but it would not display the updated value. So let me test that, see how we're doing so far. And alright, so let's make a deposit of, let's say, $500, If I click calculate, $500 appears in the new account or the balance. If I try to withdraw, let's say 600, which is more than I can, it should take only $10 as a service fee. So let's see if that's gonna, it says insufficient funds, that's okay. And it takes $10. So now our balance is $490. If I do service charge $600, it should simply say that the transaction cannot be completed because the balance would be less than zero, and doesn't do anything else. It doesn't deduct or doesn't take any amount from the balance. So if I take, let's say 90 for service charge, it should work. Yeah, it's 400. If I do check for, let's say 50, that should work just fine for 350. If I do another deposit 50, it's back to 400. If I clear it, it clears the text boxes and everything. And if I click exit, the program exits. So far so good. Now we can do the totals for the summary. So the first thing you can do is calculate the deposits, the number of deposits and the amount of deposits. So again, these are class level variables, so we have access to them and they are static, so we can keep adding to them or manipulate them, and they will hold the value or update the value without us doing any additional calculations. So we can go to our where is it, our deposit transaction right here, where we added the balance, and we can also add to our total deposits and total deposits amount. So our total deposits, we will add +1. Every time this deposit transaction is called, we will add 1 to our total deposits. In other words, how many deposits were made. And we also need to add to the total deposits amount. This is the dollar amount of all deposits, basically the sum of all deposits. So we will add whatever the current deposit is. So this is like a this is basically the total deposit amount and the total deposits as well as the balance. They are running totals. We keep adding to them. Okay, so let me just add a comment here. This is a perform deposit and add to running totals. And we can do the same for the checks. Now remember, we do not include checks that were returned for insufficient funds, but we do include the service charge of those $10. So I can come to my check transactions function, and here where we have update the balance, we will update the totals as well. So we will do our total check total checks, that's plus equals 1. We will add, it's like another transaction to it basically, and we will do our total checks amount, and we will add the transaction amount that we are processing at the moment. Now, but like I said, we have to also deal with this balance, with the fee of $10. So even though we will not, like if the check is too much and it would create a negative balance, we do not add that to our total number of checks processed. However, we will add that to our total checks amount. So over here we can do our total checks amount, and we will add $10 to it. Alright, so that will basically add the service charge of $10 to our total withdrawals, but we don't calculate it as a withdrawal. We don't add that to our total number of withdrawals, because this is kind of unintended withdrawal. We are simply being fined for trying to withdraw more money than our balance is. So now, and that's really all. We don't do anything with the service charges themselves. We don't calculate how many service charges there were or the amounts of those. It says only to calculate the deposits and the checks. The only exception was that fee of $10. But we have to display it, so if I double click on the summary button over here, we need to display the total. And the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna create a message that will hold all the information, and then I will display it into a message box. So I will create a string, I'll call it message, and I will add total number of deposits, and the total number of deposits is held in the total deposits variable. So that's our first line of the message, and now I'll just keep adding to it. So I will do plus equals, and I will start on a new line, so that's why the /n, and I will do total amount of deposits. So this is the dollar amount, so I'll add a $sign to it, and plus total deposits amount. And I will do the same for the checks. I will start on a new line, and will be total number of checks, and that's the total checks. And finally, it's gonna be the total amount of checks, and this also includes the one service charge, which is I'll just leave it at this, and it will be total checks amount. So this is the message. This is basically adding new lines to a message, and I will just pass this message to a message box. So a message box dot show, and it's gonna be the message. All right, so let me run it again. And this time, oops, this is I'm going to open a text box, and I'm going to be keeping track of what I'm entering. So I'm gonna enter a deposit of, let's say, $500 again. So let me do a deposits, service charge, and checks. So it's $500 deposit, just so I can track and see if this is working. I'll do another deposit of $5,000. So now another $5,000, so it's $5,500. That is correct. If I do check of $6,000, it should not let me do it, but it should take $10 out. And it says insufficient funds, and it takes $10 now, you can see. So, but this number of checks is 0. This is not like a check transaction, this is a fine. But the $10 should be remembered and being held when we display the summary. So we'll see if that's gonna work. So I'll do a service charge. If I do service charge $6,000, it just says that it cannot be processed. So if I do $60, that can be processed, and it adds to it or deduct from it. If I do check, let's say $430, it processes it. So I'll do $430 of check. Actually, I'm typing into a service charge. It should be into the checks over here. And I'll do another deposit of, let's say, $500, and it adds to it. And let me do another check, let's say $500 too, and it added to the balance, so that's working. So now let's display the summary. So there's 3 deposits, 1, 2, and 3. That's correct, for the total of $6,000. 500, 5,000, and 500. That's $6,000. And there's 2 checks. Remember, the first one did not go through. That was just the insufficient funds. So we have the total for $940, which is 500 and 430. That would be 930 plus the $10 of the insufficient funds fee. So that was correct. That's let me just add it here. So that is correct as well. So now when I clear it and I go to another customer, I'll do a deposit of $100 and calculate. There we go. We forgot to clear the reset the balance. It actually remembers the balance from before and adds it to it, hundreds to it. So we have to do that. So let me go. When we go to our clear over here, we have to reset our balance as well. So our balance equals 0, because now we are going to calculate or process another customer. So let me just run it again quickly with the same values. I'll try to do it. So deposit $500, calculate 5,000, calculate another 500 and calculate. So that is okay. Now do I do check of, let's say 7,000, so that would be the negative $10 insufficient funds, and it takes it out. 430, that's correct. 500, and it deducts it. Service charge, if I try to do service charge, that is too much. It says that I can't. And if I do $60 service charge, the final balance is $5,000. So if I do this, the summary, I have the value still correct, 6,000 for the deposit, 940 for the checks, but only 2 checks, even though there was the insufficient fee charge. So now if I clear it and I go and I'll add another customer basically and do a $100 deposit, so I'll just add it to it, and I will do a check, let's say for $50, and I'll add it to it, and a service charge for $5 and add it to it, so that's okay. And I do the summary, you can see that it remembers the previous values. So now I have 4 deposits, which is correct, for a total of 6,100, which is correct. And I have 3 checks, 3 regular checks of the value for the that's 980, and plus $10 from the first customer, that was the service fee of $10 for insufficient funds. So you can see that it remembers, even though we clear it, it still remembers the previous customers and it keeps adding to it. That's why it's a running total. So yeah, that seems to be working just fine, and that's really all there is to it. I don't think there is anything else. We have the form, as they requested, we have validate the values, we take care of the service charge for the check, but we do not allow the negative balance if we just do the service charge itself, and we do not don't count the withdrawal because we don't perform it. If there's any insufficient funds, we only deduct the $10, and we have the summaries that are running totals for all the customers until the program basically quits. So yeah, that's it all. I hope you could follow it. I hope it was fairly straightforward. And if it was helpful, please like the video. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Take care.